Well, g'day everyone, and it's really great to be here, Johnny. This is a really good show. We've been looking forward to this. We're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to talk about some serious stuff. But welcome to Club Grubbery, everybody, on this Wednesday, the 4th of June.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
good to
Listen,
see you. Thank
listen.
you, guys.
So today we're talking today with Jason Olbourne and Nicola Charles, who are on a great show, the Daily Australian. And I mean, this show, look, there just seems to be a new media building. The best way to punish the mainstream media for their hypocrisy in the way that they've run things over the last few decades is to knock them out of the park with media like this. And I'm talking top quality media. Hang on, I just want to adjust my video lighting here. I'm talking about really
And
classy.
my microphone.
Yeah, John, can you just turn it so we don't see the brand name? We don't want people to think that
We're sponsored by DeWalt.
we're sponsored by the Walt. Mind
We
you,
wish.
if they want to send me a package of tools, I'll gladly accept it. So, Jason and Nicola, welcome to Club Grubbery. Thoroughly enjoyed being on your show last week. It was fantastic. A lot of people have looked at that and loved it. So, it's really great to have you both on.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much for having us and for acknowledging a competitor in the space. How dare we compete with each other? But this is the point, isn't it? That we all come to the table with our own way of doing things after being abused by mainstream media for many years now.
Yeah.
And I think all of us ended up in this accidentally. It's not like we started out saying that, yeah, we want to be news people. On the contrary, we stood up because we saw something was lacking and we did it generally from around that period of lockdown or before, and we evolve. We realize when we watch ourselves back, which sometimes we do, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, the way that we speak, the way that we phrase, the way that we look down the barrel of the camera, the way that we build new ideas, new technology, all of it to create an offering that makes a genuine alternative to the stuff that we don't want to consume anymore on the mainstream.
Such a good thing. And I mean, what you're talking about, or we're competitors, but we're not.
That's right.
We're not competing for advertising dollar. We're not competing for audience. We want to get the message out there. And I know, Nicola, that's been a big thing for you. We've had you on as White Rabbit a few times, and your podcasts have been sensational. I mean, you come with a kind of a celebrity background from your acting role on television and so on, but you're so much more than that, and you've proved that in the last few years. How has it been for you in the last few years? I know that you've struggled a little bit with the pressure, as we all have. It's been hard balancing it all. But how do you balance family and earning money and all the other things that have gone on, along with the persecution that
Mm.
you've received in your own industry?
Well, I don't need to stress about it. Would you say earning money? I kind of forgot earning money. What's that? I've forgotten what that feels like. I used to earn. I went through a phase where I was earning at least 10,000 Australian dollars a week when I was young. This is 30 years ago, so things change anyway without COVID. But I used to earn lots of money, and of course, you don't realize you've got a good thing going until it's gone. And that's certainly the way my life has panned out. And I just felt many things happened for me, like everyone else, like every Australian. It felt like a massive attack, and I had a custody battle going on at the beginning of COVID myself. And there was talk of injecting my son and using him as a medical experiment. And the fact that I was opposed to that, I was potentially the worst parent. My lovely husband had the same thing with his son, and unfortunately, against his wishes, a court ordered that his son does, get the jab. So all of this personal stuff was going on. Now, around that time, I was asked, because I was a bit of a loudmouth on X, on my fourth X account, I was asked by the new sort of free media radio station TNT to jump on there and have my say. And I ended up on there with this great Northern Irish guy, Rick, who's just got this amazing radio voice. And the news guy, often on my radio show, was a guy called Jason Olbourne. So eventually, sadly and shockingly, I did get a phone call to tell me that I was being relieved of my duties on TNT because I'd interviewed Dr. Melissa McCann, And I pushed her quite hard on who funds the TGA, and the network didn't like it because they said she won't come back on, because I forced her to say essentially on air after a bit of an uncomfortable pause that 96% of the TGA funding comes from Big Pharma. So I said to her, so why should any of us listen to anything they've got to say? And I got a phone call saying, you're out. But the whole time I've continued to watch and respect Rick out of Northern Ireland and Jason Olbourne. So at the beginning of this year, after being deplatformed from virtually everywhere except X, because for some reason Elon Musk likes me. Thank you, Elon. I don't know if you're a good guy or a bad guy, but thank you for liking me.
I haven't worked that out either.
I sat on my front bench having my one organic ciggy a day to kill my parasites. And I thought, you know what? I'm sick of this. I've got nowhere to go. And it's like pre-COVID, when you're coming up with a business idea, you ask yourself, what's missing? Oh, I've got no organic store. Maybe I should open an organic store. I've got no British pub. That's something else I want to do. Let's open a British pub. There was no radio station for me to listen to where I felt people were telling the truth. And I am quite spiritual. I'm a Christian. And almost like a head-up display in a car, a name floated down in front of my face, and the name was Jason Olbourne. And I had not thought about this guy since being fired from TNT. And I thought, I'm going to ring him and ask him. And you know what? It was the best thing I ever did, because I might have sat there and thought the name Jason Olbourne, but since I've partnered with him, as you can clearly see from the show, I'm not going to be sexist and say it, but I think because he's a guy and he's more techie than me and he's pushy and he wants to succeed. And, you know, I've got the heart and he's got the dedication and the knowledge. And I think he's made the show visually and informationally more palatable to the audience, because I'm a woman and I run on emotion and my stories and my personal experience. Jason brings me back into line to, this is the news of the day. What do we think about this news of the day today? So it works. It's that yin and yang, that male and female. And I'm very glad. I'm very happy with the choice I made. So that's how it started.
Well, it's certainly working, because I think you're up, when you interviewed me last week, I was episode 102.
Yeah.
And I think Johnny's going to be episode 110 or something. I'm sure there's an interview waiting there for Johnny.
Oh gosh, could we be honoured by you, John? That would be fabulous.
He's on Chris Smith all the time. He's been on Sky all the time. He's like this with Rowan Dean. Johnny's got a lot of really great stuff out there. He was the guy who got Dominic Perrottet to admit that they blew it on radio.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was great stuff. Johnny, you're wearing a lot of hats. You're a councillor for Snowy Valley Council. You've been fulfilling that role for a long while. You've had or still have a role in the SES. You're very active in the political sphere. You're doing Club Grubbery. You're also the chairman of the Aligned Council of Australia. Why are you in all these spaces? Why do you wear these hats? I don't see you wearing a tin foil hat. I see you wear a lot of other hats. Why are you doing this?
Well, I think it stems, Hoodie, out of us losing our jobs primarily. We were forced to take an experimental jab or basically not have employment, and it not that I was in Nazi Germany, but that's what I thought it was like. I thought, what's happened here? This can't be happening. And somebody that had been a paramedic like myself for 25 years. It made no sense to me that we were going to run around and use an experimental product on something that didn't appear to have any more impact than a common cold from what I was seeing. Pandemics are meant to be, when you go up the main street, people are dropping dead in front of you. Well, I wasn't seeing any of that. And so I wasn't alarmed, and I wasn't buying any of the nonsense that was going on. And we've sort of come down this pathway. I had an interest in media for a long time. I, in fact, did work experience as a journalist as a young kid at TUE. It's something that I've always had a passion for. I even went and did some work experience in the Channel 9 helicopter as well. So sort of ended up in the media in a different sort of spectrum. But here we are. And that guy you mentioned before, I presume you're talking about Rick Munn. I mean, what a legend he is. I'm not sure what he's up to at the moment. He's gone a bit quiet, but
Mm.
it would be great to actually interview him, Hoodie. He's an absolute legend, and
Yes.
I've managed to be on his program a couple of times late at night, and he is a real firebrand, and one of those people overseas that has been trying to tell everyone what's going on in Australia, because I think people were a little bit, left in the dark about how bad it was in these places. Like we were probably last week, Woody, listening to Pastor in Canada.
Pastor Arthur
That
Pulowski.
almost, yeah, I mean, it almost gave you PTSD listening to the poor bugger.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah,
that's how
absolutely.
horrific it is. So here we are, yeah, and yeah, I knew Jason's mum. Um, an absolute legend
Oh,
Thank you.
in the aeromedical industry. She was one of the most beautiful people that you could ever meet, and I was fortunate enough to work with her for many years, and she was just a
wow.
beautiful light. So yeah, here we are.
Well, here we are. Yeah, my media experience before Club Grubbery was, yeah, I did a little radio show on TNT. It was called Under the Hood, and that lasted for about, I don't know, I think a month. What interfered with that was going to Canberra because I couldn't do a daily program because we were at these protests. Which is why Canberra happened for me was I went there to interview truckies for TNT Radio because we couldn't get any on the show, and I thought I'll go to Canberra. One thing led to another, and there we all were in the backdrop of John's photo. Other than that, my media career started at age 16 when I was a copy boy for the Sydney Morning Herald. Um, Man, I learned a lot. I was there for about 9 weeks because I realised that I was paying $5 a week for transport and they're only paying me $7 a week. So it wasn't working all that well for me. But anyway, here we are. So we are talking about, we're here because of the tyranny of the global situation that is clearly evident. I've been doing a lot of speaking with Trevor Loudon, who we interviewed twice, who wrote the book Comrade Prime Minister about Anthony Albanese's career in communism, 42-year plus career with communism. And I've since gone into another documentary that he made and researched that pretty heavily in the last week, The Enemy Within the Church. And it all points to a communist fascist takeover that started way back in the Cold War. And I've been listening to a lot of defected and defecting KGB agents who have been talking about the strategies they employ. And everything has gone right by their playbook. Destabilize society, demoralize it, destabilize it, normalize it, and then you win. And that's what they're doing. And they've come out, videos from 1984 have come out saying this was the plan always. And now it's transpired exactly by the playbook. So here we are in this space because we've recognized there's a tyranny. And there's been a lot of stuff evident in the last few days that would be causing concern on both sides of the fence. Let's talk about the big issue today, which is the amended immunisation handbook from the Australian Federal Government Health Department. Now, Jason, you guys have been discussing this on your program today. Tell us give us a bit of a broad brush on what this amendment has come out and said and why we're angry about it.
All right. So the timing of it is extraordinary because only last week we saw the three big guns in the American health space, RFK Jr., Marty Makary, and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, come out and announce that for healthy children and healthy pregnant women, the COVID vaccine was no longer recommended. So you park that for the moment, and then we see this announcement yesterday that reads, COVID-19 vaccine is not recommended for healthy infants, children or adolescents who do not have medical conditions that increase their risk of severe illness. But here's the kicker. The next sentence reads, this is because the risk of severe illness was extremely low in this cohort over the course of the pandemic, and the benefits of vaccination are not considered to outweigh the potential harms. Well, colour me pink, was extremely low. What do you mean was? These people denied this told us that we were cookers, wanted to censor us. Brad Hazard literally threatened our lives and our livelihoods, wanted to take us out, and now they're saying was extremely low, and now considering outweighing the potential harms. What potential harms? I thought it was safe and effective, Greg Hunt. What exactly are you saying? This blows my mind. Now, what we talked about today on the show, Hoodie, and this is a reminder, this is how I got started in front of a camera after 12 years in TV production in the home shopping space, which taught me all about ad-libbing and an unscripted 1 hour show, which are literally presenting products and people are buying them in real time. I did 5,000 hours of home shopping production, so I got pretty good at being able to speak into the ear of the presenter and realizing what was going on. Did you know? And do you recall, I'm sure, John, you remember this, not one female in Australia under the age of 50 died from COVID before the jab came out. Not one. Now, where did they get off telling us that this thing was dangerous? If females under the age of 50, and there were single digits on the males, and as I reminded people this morning on the show, they came out and said that a little boy died from COVID who was about 3 or 4 years of age. He had a genetic disorder that meant that he wasn't meant to live beyond the age of 2. So when he died, they said he died from COVID, and that was the excuse. And that was the excuses that we will be given at the time. So we knew 99.9% of people were not going to succumb. It was just a coronavirus. Yes, people who got it, like myself, worst 2 days of my life, but it was only 2 days. And ironically, I was just doing the usual protocols, the zinc, etc., just to sort of keep the immune system going. But I tell you what, when I did catch this thing, whatever it was the strangest bug I'd ever got, because I got 6 symptoms. Each of them lasted exactly 20 hours, and in 60 hours it was over. I had 2. I had this massive headache in the back of my neck and nausea for 20 hours. It went away. It was replaced by 2 other symptoms, which was a runny nose and sort of blocked up. And in 20 hours that evaporated, and it became diarrhea and vomiting. And after 60 hours it was gone, never came back. And that was it. My wife never got it. My kids never got it. And of course, we never took the recommended advice. We ran our own race. So for anyone telling you that what they were saying and backtracking now, for mine, I think what we're looking at now, if we then juxtapose that, what we're now seeing in the US with Bobby Kennedy saying that the reason that they had to make it available or approve it for children is that the children provide indemnity against vaccines. So once now it's unrecommended, that opens the doors, and Bobby Kennedy, who is a litigation expert, now knows that the door is open. And now we go down the next pathway here, which is the big story, is how do we take these guys out for crimes against humanity once we now prove what they're actually up against. And if I can just indulge for a little bit longer, I just want to read something out from a fellow called Clandestine. Many people follow him on social media. And he wrote this, I think it was yesterday, and he said, everyone has their preferred number one priority for the Trump administration. For me, he says it's justice for COVID, and so far I'm loving what I'm seeing. Tulsi Gabbard confirmed that the Trump DNI, NIH and HHS are investigating the origins of COVID. Dan Bongino said the FBI are looking into it also. RFK Jr. and Bhattacharya of the HHS and NIH respectively are pulling recommendations for COVID shots, taking on Big Pharma, and are repeatedly hammering home the fact that COVID-19 was a man-made pathogen made by US-funded research. This subject is so important, not just because of the amount of lives that were lost and affected, but because this situation provides a legal avenue to legitimately hold deep state actors accountable for crimes against humanity. Trump and his administration have proven that they are tracking on the situation, and they already know where the trail ends. All the top deep state players are implicated in the creation of biological weapons via offshore gain-of-function research as USAID-funded NGOs. This still remains our most likely and most effective avenue to administer justice. And I have to say, without blowing my trumpet, that is exactly what I predicted years ago. And I'm sure the rest of you on the panel have got something similar to compare. But I tell you what, we are now in the box seat. And if we can improve ourselves and our skills in the independent media space, there is no reason why in 18 months to 2 years, we are not the people that they're seeing on the mainstream news and coming to us first before they swallow that garbage anymore. That's how I feel about this situation.
I love what you're saying. Now, Nicola Charles, the handbook says, unless you have underlying health conditions. Well, thanks to the madness and the mandates and the persecution of governments and media and these bureaucracies, a lot of people now have underlying health conditions that they wouldn't have had they not been forced to take it. Now, when I was on your program last week, I spoke in a conciliatory fashion around Magda Zabansky, and I still hold that view.
Mm.
But when it comes to these mongrels, I'm afraid no. No, no, no. They must be held to account. We cannot move ahead as a nation or as a people on this planet until these mongrels are held to account. This is reprehensible.
I can only talk to personal experience. I mentioned it this morning, but I've got two neighbors on either side, spaced out a bit. One side, I've got two sisters who are chicken farmers. And one of the sisters, who was the one I spoke to the most, who was formerly a psychiatrist, retired into chicken farming, she's now got Guillain-Barré syndrome. And a carer has to arrive every day in a car to help her get down 3 wooden steps from her house to her chickens. On the other side, I've got an old lady. Her and her husband were in their mid-80s, and they were so excited. They just bought a new house. It was sort of a new built house. And he had a tool shed built for himself. And every day he used to tinker in there. And I love this couple. One of the things they said, because I have very large Mastiff dogs, one of the things they used to say to me is, we love living next door to you because we at least know that along this fence line, no burglars are getting in. No one's coming over your fence because no one's in your bit. Yesterday I was in IGA, my local IGA in the countryside, and a lady I hadn't seen for a long time. And I said, where have you been? Are you okay? She'd had a 2-kilo tumor cut out of her uterus. And she said, they told me I've got a very rare immunocompromised system. I said bravely, with a cue behind me, did they tell you why? And she said, yeah, they told me it's because I'd had children. Now, in our family, we have my parents, my in-laws, my stepson, and my future son-in-law all injected. One of those, I won't personalize it, one of those had a blood platelet level drop from 350 to 130 after vaccination, which we were told was a cancer pathway. This person's mother also had turbo breast cancer. All the other stuff was all over the shop, and we had to go and see Dr. Duncan. You all know Dr. Duncan, who put him on a protocol and is getting his health back on track. So essentially what I'm trying to say to you is that everyone around me has been affected by this. So I don't need to listen to any mainstream media that say to me it's rare. The old lady along the fence line who appreciated my dogs, her lovely husband, mid-80s, died of a massive turbospinal tumor, and he died on the operating table when they tried to remove it. And now she's alone. She's completely alone, and it's broken my heart. So for me, it's a bit like John being a paramedic. It's a vocation now to try and find out what's going on. And I really don't appreciate that in a situation that is now confirmed that we've all been attacked by something biological that was built by the hands of man, instead of the government warning us, being trustworthy, trying to help us, telling us to juice oranges and take zinc and get out in the sunlight, no, they locked us down, told us not to go outside for more than an hour a day, didn't just offer a remedy and a new technology, which if they'd just done that, a vast amount of people would have probably still given it a go if they were frightened enough. But they cost us everything. My husband lost his career. I lost my career. I've never been so frightened in all my life. We were at the point where I think Australians were sort of, getting ready for that knock at the door. Would there be a policeman or a UN soldier at the door saying, you're an unvaccinated house and, we need to deal with you, because the fear porn was so huge. Now, the fact that this establishment media, for instance, last night, one of the establishment medias here in Australia suddenly went into a huge promotional push for the supermarket that used to say down, down, prices are down. And what I call them now, up, up, surveillance is up, because there's about 2,000 cameras in each supermarket. They just went into a huge ad saying that, they're lowering prices. It's okay, we've price gouged you for 5 years, but we're going to lower the pricing now. So you might actually be able to have 2 meals a day instead of 1 meal a day, which most people I know are having in Australia. And I feel so let down because our so-called leadership, our so-called public servants are actually paid. I feel like we should issue them with cease and desist notices so that they no longer take those salaries because they're not working for us. As soon as he was elected, Anthony Albanese jumped on a plane, nicked off to Brussels to get his marching orders. These people were responsible for public health and they bragged about it. They gave themselves awards for it. The Australian Medical Association gave Kerry Chant the President's Award for her leadership in medicine during the pandemic. These are people whose actions harmed people. Don't get me started on Brad Hazard and the dragging into a sports stadium of 24,000 Catholic schoolboys. That was extraordinary. So they brag about how wonderful they are, but they don't actually do their jobs. They're not public servants. They don't care about us. And I think that commercial that was on the establishment media last night proved to you who's in control of the narrative. So if you've got a BlackRock-owned business taking over the news for an advert, then surely same BlackRock-owned business takes over the narrative with regard to the other things they all recommended, an injection.
Unbelievable. John, this amendment to the immunisation handbook, it must have lit a fire in you.
Yeah, well, look, it doesn't surprise me, Hoodie. This is how these people operate. I mean, these notes were out there for all to see for some time. I mean, there was a clinical safety notice that the New South Wales ambulance put out that I exposed some time ago. That was dated August 2021, and what that was a document given to every paramedic in New South Wales saying to be on the lookout for instances of myocarditis and pericarditis in especially in young adults after the vaccine, after the Pfizer. Now, if they thought that was serious enough to put out a clinical safety notice to every staff member back in August 2021, why was Brad Hazard sacking us for not having it in September of 2021? I mean, it beggars belief. And here we are, the same sort of things happening with these rearrangements of the deck chairs on these other documents. I mean, they would have been hoping that this was just not exposed, and they do these things in the dead of night so that nobody picks up on it. But we're all over it now. I mean, I was just listening to Chris Smith. He opened his program on 2SM about this very issue. So, I think that's absolutely promising that this stuff's going on. And then later on, I mean, we talk about the new media. Well, I think this is an interesting point, Hoodie, that Chris Smith did a cross to a Channel 7 TV reporter in the Latrobe Valley about the mushroom deaths with this court case going on. And he posed a question to her. He said, "Is there any international media there?" And she said, "Yes, the BBC's here," but she said, "There's a hell of a lot of podcasters and other media." And I thought, wow. That tells you a story that we are having a real impact because that would not have occurred pre-COVID. I mean, podcasters would not have been at a murder trial for mushrooms. But here we are. We're out and about, and we're getting the truth to people in different formats. And it was funny to hear it on mainstream media what's actually happening.
Well, it's bizarre too, isn't it, that they're covering 3 deaths from mushrooms to such an extent when thousands of people are dying from COVID injections, and it doesn't rate a mention. Look, this week several things have popped up on my radar, and I think, John, you posted them, which is you're posting a lot of great stuff on your platform as well. Um, One was a mainstream tabloid media were talking about medical authorities are miffed to understand why there's a rapid rise in cancer deaths in Australia, and the rapid rate at which these diseases are taking control of people's lives. That was one. Yesterday, while driving, I listened to ABC News Radio, which I do for fun. It's quite interesting to hear them prattle on there. The Burnett Institute, our friends at the Burnett Institute have come out, and ABC covered this extensively, and they said that we have done research which indicates that you are 14% less likely to be hospitalised with COVID if you have the COVID and the flu shots together. So they brought on an immunisation specialist, a professor from Sydney University, and the interviewer said, so is there something magical about the two formulas mixing together that's bringing about this result? She said, well, no. She said, well, why are they recommending this? Well, what they're saying is that it probably, maybe, might, as a result of the mathematical modelling they're doing, might be beneficial. But the interviewer said, for what reason? Oh, well, we think it's because of the convenience of having both shots at the same time when you go to the doctors. So if you go to have your flu shot, you can say, the doctor can say to you, look, while you're here, why don't we give you a COVID booster as well? That's what the research was about. And it took up all this media space. It took up 15 minutes in one segment, and that would have been repeated hour after hour, talking about promoting the two vaccines together because they're very scared that a lot of people aren't getting boosted. The numbers are frightening. So the hypocrisy goes on. And then straight out of the blue, Chris Smith, God bless his cotton socks, came out and said, you know what, I was wrong. I was pushing this in the beginning, and we remember him doing that. You know what, I'm really sorry I was wrong. I regret doing it. The narrative's collapsing.
Mm.
And as much as I want to put the tinny in the water and go and catch a flathead with Michelle, I don't want to be on the river when this all tumbles. I want to be in the mix because the independent media are going to do the job. Jason.
It's interesting that you mentioned Smithy because he also had his career resurrected or saved by Mike and Jenny over at TNT. He was offered a gig there for a year or so and went through the motions, if you will, to bring back his career. So we're all quite, in many ways, quite lucky that we had that experience. So that's something. Now, a couple of points I just want to make. Just how we all end up in this. John, as you knew, my mum, she passed away at the young age of 67 from cardiac angiosarcoma. That is cancer of the heart. So rare that only 300 people in history ever got it. And my mum, a nurse working for Air Ambulance, gets it. And at the time, I did some research, and there were 4 triggers that could be accounted for this particular cancer. And would you believe it? One of them was a live flu vaccine. And I showed it to Mum. And she goes, oh, there's no such thing as a live flu vax. Well, I said, there is, and this is what causes what you have. And Mum was an infectious disease expert. She was a clinical nurse specialist. She had 3 certificates, old school, and she went down this pathway. So I always used to bargain with myself, if Mum were alive, would she have listened to me at this particular juncture? That's where my radar detector went up. Although, given that she was in that situation, I think the very first flu vaccine ever came out, she convinced me to go down that pathway. I remember taking it, getting the flu for 3 days and thought, well, what's the point of that? I think I'll rather have 3 days off in the future. I'm drinking chicken soup and watching movies at home and a mental health break from work or school or whatever I was doing. So never went down that pathway again. I also just want to recall quickly, Hoodie, I wrote to the Myocarditis Foundation in September of 2021, and I was at the time representing my website that we'd created called A Million Mums for Informed Consent. And I wrote to them and said, I'm reading your website looking for information about these 2 diseases as they relate to younger males as caused by these 2 vaccines and now noted on the safety risk. What is the position of the Myocarditis Foundation in relation to risk profiles for young people taking the vaccines, as it may pertain to long-term heart damage, with recurrence likely in up to 15% of cases in normal viral myocarditis. Also, how does vaccine myocarditis occur in two entirely different vaccine models and technologies if it is not the spike protein being the cause? Can you please enlighten? So I get this response, which I was surprised that I got, and it said, you must understand that there really is no long-term knowledge about COVID vaccine-induced heart damage. So hold that thought for a moment. As for viral myocarditis, most people recover without complications as long as the heart is allowed to heal properly with cardiac rest. There is knowledge that the area of the heart that was affected by myocarditis develops a sort of scar, such as when you get a bad site on the skin. The area takes time to heal. It heals better when there is restriction in movement, such as stitches, and it goes from being red and inflamed to pink and then fades. The scar area fades and shrinks like a scar on the skin. The better healing process, the less the scar. But she says, you cannot put your heart in a cast like a broken bone for 2 months or so to allow the immobility of the bone to heal properly. The only way a sick heart can heal is cardiac rest, which basically is not causing the heart to work harder than it needs to keep your body alive. So by limiting exercise that increases your heart rate to above your normal for, wait for it, 3 to 6 months, which is the time they have found that the heart requires to heal that area of scar, is the best way to allow the sick heart to heal and not overwork itself. During that period of time, that scar area is more prone to lethal cardiac arrhythmias when you increase the workload on the heart, such as athletes passing out on the field and having sudden cardiac death. So that wasn't us making that up. That's the president of the executive director of the Myocarditis Foundation. Then here's another chestnut. Myocarditis is the third leading cause of sudden cardiac death in children and young adults. The high-risk age group to develop myocarditis from viruses is from puberty through your early 30s, boys twice as frequent as girls. Here we go. I can tell you that the cardiologists believe, she just said earlier that they didn't have enough info, that the cases of myocarditis that develop after vaccine are generally less severe than those that develop from actual virus, and the recovery is often shorter. I cannot tell you anything about the research as I do not have that information. So we believe, we think, and then we don't have any intel. So who's the conspiracy theorist? Please remember, they are learning things as they go day on day. This has not been around for very long. I hope this helps you understand a little bit more. They do believe that the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks of getting the COVID virus, even if one was to develop myocarditis. That is the executive director, Genevieve Rumor, from the Myocarditis Foundation in Texas. And today, what have we learnt? That they have stopped it for under 18s because the risk of severe illness was extremely low in this cohort over the course of of the pandemic, and the benefits of vaccination are not considered to outweigh the potential harms. So they have had a bet each way. They have gone full speed at 100%. No other arguments will be entered into, and today they've turned it around. I reckon Tony Nikolic needs to rub his hands together and take these bastards to the cleaners, and Tony will deserve to write his own ticket in such a circumstance, John. This is mind-boggling. We have two complete polar opposites in writing right there on the page. Incredible.
Yeah, and as Nicola said, 24,000 school kids just in one hit that Brad Hazard and Kerry Chant wheeled into a stadium. It's sick, and it just demonstrates why the police need to actually get involved in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like assault. I thought that was like assault. But let me just say to people out there, because I'm uninjected with that stuff as far as I know, and I did get sick in 2020. In fact, at that time I was still a soap star. The last time I was on the show, which doesn't exist anymore, Neighbours, was 2016, so quite recently. And I did get sick in 2020. And because they were telling us, this terrible flu is coming, I initially, for 2 seconds, I believed them. And I went on my social media, because I still had it then, Instagram and YouTube and all the things I'm now banned from. And I said, this is terrible. You don't want to get this. But let me tell you, I think for something positive, I think it's extraordinary. Now we know that this was made in a lab by the hands of man. It is amazing that our natural bodies, our reasonably organic bodies in this world, mine certainly, and others I know, we dealt with this non-natural thing that came at us so well. I mean, it was, as Jason said, it was horrible at the time. I had the same thing, Jason, the 24 hours of each symptom, which is really weird. And of course, you know it's coming. People, you can advise people now when you get that headache that's like the 20 times the worst hangover you've ever had, you're getting it, right? It's coming. That's the warning. But our bodies not only dealt with it, but they did create some kind of immunity to it. And I definitely had that thing where I felt like it affected my heart because I'd been a runner for 27 years. And my instincts, which I always listened to, told me, don't run for a long time. And I didn't run for a year afterwards. No one had told me medically not to do it. But I knew, and what I actually thought, I think I've said this on the podcast, certainly not on radio. I actually said to my husband and my family, same as you, Jason, no one caught it from me, which was weird. I actually said to them, this isn't human. What's in me isn't human. I knew. I had a thing where I could feel fluttering like butterflies in my arms, and it must have been in my bloodstream. And it was first one arm and then the other arm. And it felt like when you first get pregnant and the first feeling of the baby you get is that little butterfly in your tummy and the baby's starting to move. I had that in my arms. And I said, this isn't human. And my first thought was, and Jason, you're into the whole, aliens and off-world stuff. I thought aliens had come to Earth and they'd released this alien virus, and I'd probably watched too many X-Files, because my instincts were searching for an excuse as to why this non-human thing was inside my body. And it was rough to get over, but considering it was man-made and considering I didn't have the remedy, my body dealt with that. And I think twice in the last 5 years, it's tried again. Twice I got that searing headache and the pain in the back of my neck. And I thought, oh my God, it's back. I literally got the fear. I felt afraid inside. But it was only the headache, no symptoms. It went away because my body said, wait, we've seen this before. So just in my own personal experience, natural immunity kicked it, slammed it against anything they man-made in a needle, even though they engineered this in a lab.
Yeah, I remember, John, that rally we went to in Sydney. You remember uh,
Yeah.
that was the day that Greg Hunt announced the Omicron variant had arrived in Australia. Someone had arrived at Sydney Airport with Omicron. Well, that day, Michelle and I were hugging and praying with thousands of people. We spent 4 hours doing that, and we ended up being sick. And we had a blood test done to see if we had any immunity, and it was decided in that blood examination that we had contracted the Delta variant, and that gave us permission to travel across the West Australian border for 6 months, which was great. So that's when we started our Community of Unity tour. But all I remember is as a pilot with Qantas, being locked in an aluminium tube with a lot of people unwell in a very poorly filtered system of air all of my career. I used to get the flu about every 2 years. I'd get a bad dose of the flu. It was nothing worse than that. That lingering cough that hangs on for weeks after you feel better, a bit of that going on. But for us, it was a non-event, and we were in the high-risk category. We were the old farts who had all these, I'm overweight and whatever. And I mean, it's just crackers. The whole thing is crackers. And I reiterate, I believe we should be compassionate towards people who fell for the narrative and took it.
Yeah.
We should be compassionate to those who thought they were doing the right thing in promoting it, as some really did. But when it comes to the mongrels who put them in that position, they're the ones we need to go after. They need to be held to account. A lot of them need to go to jail at the very minimum. And we need to make sure that happens, whether you're Christian or not, whether you're Buddhist or you don't believe in anything.
Yeah.
We can't walk past a standard that we can't accept. And we have
Well, I
to.
think that those that were duped, Hoodie, I mean, as Chris Smith has identified now's the time to be speaking up. And these people really are doing themselves a disservice by not speaking up.
Well, Magda's doubling down, John. Magda is doubling down on her social media. And she's saying, I never push lockdowns and vaccines because I'm not a doctor. And I was really disappointed when I read that. That was after our show went to air and we talked about it a great deal. And she said she was just being a good citizen. So I asked a question. I was very polite underneath, and I said, I wish you well, but I'm just asking, were you paid to be a good citizen? Because I've been a good citizen for 5 years, and I certainly wasn't paid for that. And all of her people attacked me underneath and said, it's none of your goddamn business. But that's the thing, isn't it? They were paid to be good citizens.
Yeah,
We haven't been.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, I did watch a podcast. I think there was something floating around there this week from the project, and they brought up the issue about the payments, and I think there was a $2,000 payment, and some of them, I think Magda might have been one of them that donated it to a charity or something of that nature. But the media is so crazy in all this, and they're still the problem. And here we've got, and I don't want to appear as though I'm being cruel, but I mean there was a young child that was um, deceased as a result of presenting at a Northern Beaches hospital. And there was obviously some issues that led to that need to be corrected. But I mean, here we've got one isolated death of a child, and I'm very, my heart bleeds for the parents and family of that poor child. But they're having a parliamentary inquiry into that one death, and into that hospital.
And we've got thousands of injured. Yeah.
And I mean, we've heard. I'd love to verify it, but they're saying there's 18 staff members at Bulli Hospital that have the same batch that have got cancers. Now, nobody's refuting this. So, the health minister, Ryan Stokes, is that his name? What's his Ryan Park? Sorry, Ryan Park in New South Wales. He needs to come out and tell us what's going on there.
Yep.
But this is critical. When you look at this information that Barry Young presented over in New Zealand, it's evident that these batches were problematic.
Is
And
he still in jail, John?
I think he's just been in court. Um, so, yeah, I did watch a video of him last week where he was outside court. So they're still after him. I mean, this guy. I mean, a lot of people are very nervous about talking about him, but I think this guy's a hero. I mean, this guy was part of their narrative. He was another one that looked at it and said, "Hang on, there's something not right here." He knew from the data that these things were just too outrageous in data terms to be just.
They kept saying to us the data and the science, and now they don't want the data. It's the same with Metro North in Queensland. We interviewed Julian Gillespie. Without informed consent, they're destroying those samples, right? The people gave their consent for them to enter the study. They certainly didn't give their consent for them to be destroyed after the fact before knowing the outcome. So that they talk, long and hard about the data and the science, but they don't really want it because now it's really coming to light. And so they've got their fingers in their ears, and it's like, la, 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 it's not really happening. No, it's happening. So what we need is true leadership where you people address this. Because if you think you've got another pandemic coming down the pipe so that you and Bill Gates can get rich because you did such a good job last time, before you've addressed what you did last time, you can forget it. They've lost the people. I tweeted out yesterday, they've lost control of us, and it's magnificent. And I am telling you, it's not the anti-vaxxers they need to worry about anymore. It's the no more vaxxers, because so much harm has been done that larger cohort of people who did comply are having no more of it, and I don't blame them.
It's just building and building and building before our very eyes, and we can see that. And a lot of people who wouldn't talk to me 2 years ago are now sort of sidling up. I've had some apologies. I've had some people come and say, you know what, you were right. We had no idea. And it's there, but for the grace of God go I. But another interesting article that's risen up too is Moderna's mRNA vaccines to be exempt from advisory committee scrutiny under a $2 billion Morrison deal. Have you guys looked at that story?
No, I haven't.
Published in The Guardian. So Morrison did a deal with Moderna, and you guys reported last week, Jason, you put a graph up saying how Moderna has really struggled financially. They've gone from $380 something at their peak to $27 now. And Moderna mRNA vaccines to be exempt from advisory committee scrutiny under a $2 billion Morrison Moderna deal. Australians will be offered respiratory vaccines from next year without the usual assessment that ensures that they are most effective, available at the best possible price, and under the confidential $2 billion onshore manufacturing deal the Morrison government struck with Moderna. I mean,
it's extraordinary, Hoodie. Stefan Bancel is an absolute, he's next level. Now, he was a sales rep at Moderna, and he becomes the CEO. He was confronted by Maria Bartiromo a couple of years ago about how it was that some of these patented strains, etc., were connected to the COVID sequence, etc., basically showing them that they had forewarned knowledge of what was going on here. And all he did was say, I'll have my scientists look at it with a big smile on his face. So whichever way it works with Bancel, there is something very, very sinister in this arrangement. And the fact that ScoMo was on board, the fact that Daniel Andrews was on board, and they were building this big mRNA factory down in Victoria, it starts to show you this whole idea of whatever a deep state really is behind the scenes. Because how can ScoMo and Josh Frydenberg have a problem with Dan Andrews taking Belt and Road money from China, but allowing him to go through with it and then being on the same side of mRNA vaccination? So as Nicola says, are these people taking orders from Brussels or from somewhere else, this hidden globalist organisation that makes us sound like we're screaming at the clouds and look crazy? But you've only got to look at what we've been listening to for the last 5 years in this self-appointed World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab now retired. But at the same time, King Charles was attending said meetings and acting as a globalist. Now, last time I looked, the Union Jack is on the Australian flag. That means that we are still part of this situation.
Yeah, but the Australian flag is missing. We said today it's not on the new ads for kindergarten in Australia. So the Union Jack is on the Australian flag, but the Australian flag is not on anything anywhere.
And this is this other scenario behind the scenes, almost like we have to hate ourselves, as opposed to we're still under this control from this situation. And the hating on ourselves business is, as an aside, is just next level. I've never seen anything like it, that we have become, not just here in Australia, but around the world, a society of victims, that we have to work out how bad things are for ourselves and then look to the government who made us victims in the first place to get us out of being victims, to save us. Like, the psychology is completely wrong. I used to have conversations with Jared Rennick, and I called it financial nihilism, this idea that people feel like that they can't afford to buy a property or to get ahead in life, and so that they've given up, and then they fall into the Klaus Schwab, you'll own nothing and be happy, and how that even makes sense. And the fact that if you go into retirement and you have to rent somewhere, and the price of rent keeps going up year on year on year, how are you supposed to fund your retirement? It's almost as if you'll want to be taken out at a certain age, so you can't, once you can't pay your bills. It's almost like the system is created in a way to attack the elderly, then make the young people feel like that they're living in a world of hopelessness, and then go after the middle class. And as you said at the beginning of the at the interview today, Hoodie, you talked about communism, and then you talked about fascism, and people might be listening and go, he's crazy. How can they be the same thing? Well, let's put it together. Communism, or Marxism, is the uprising of the working class against the system of business that creates the job, and saying that as a factor of production, we, the worker, deserve an equal or a better share. In this case, we're going to take over. And fascism is pretty much defined as a corporate and a government working together. And so it is, if the government is allowing Marxism and is letting the corporations take over like they did during COVID. Amazon could do anything, McDonald's could do anything, the bottle shop could be open, but the little guy had to close. That was fascism in real time. So there we have the situation that I keep referring to, Nicola, don't I? Dr. Gavin Ashenden, former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth, who I interviewed, and when he explained it, that what you have is you have the globalists, which are technically the fascists, with the Marxists, which is the young group today that is struggling, and it's not their fault, but it's certainly not their parents' fault. And you've got the Islamification of the UK all working together to achieve this end, as Gavin explained it. And so when you get it to the end state, how can your Islamic immigration in that country then side with the communists at the end? Then there's going to be a confrontation when they're the only ones left, because then they're going to want the power. And so none of this has been thought out, but it's kind of like people have been let in certain situations to attack the haves and the have-a-littles against the have-nots that are in this situation, which is the Marxist uprising. It's frightening, because then you realize that it's an indoctrination process, and all you really need to do to make this work is you create the USAIDs, you grease the palms, and you just feed the beast. And so people never want to go against the hand that feeds them. They don't want to bite it, because they know that they're restricted. And this is why I think we're having such a hard time here, because all four of us on this show, and the thousands that will watch it, and hopefully it'll be millions and it will go viral just on what we said about COVID. But we have all had to be self-sufficient for the last 5 years. And we have learnt brand new skills. And because of that
Starving.
self-sufficiency.
That's one of the skills I've learned, Jason. Starving,
But
eating less, doing less, having less, not being able to afford to service my car. All of these things. That's what we've learned. We've learned to do with less, to suffer. And that's been an indoctrination process, because when they talk about equity, guys, when they talk about equity, they're not talking about bringing poorer people up to our level. They're talking about pushing us down to third world level. And that's what they've been doing. And talking of the UK, Jason, Keir Starmer now has the nerve, the gall to ask Britons, who he has ignored and disregarded for the last number of years, to sign up and go and fight Russia for him. He's got no hope.
Oh,
But
ridiculous.
we have to really go back to the roots of this stuff. We recognise that we are in a battle between good and evil. And I've spent the last few months looking at what does the evil look like. And it's, I hate to say this, I'm going to offend some people, probably Catholics, but we go back to the first Industrial Revolution, when Pope Leo the 13th was the Pope in power during that period of time. And he brought out an encyclical called Rerum Novarum. Now, if you were to read Rerum Novarum, it tells you clearly that the papacy at that time was instigating socialism on a grand scale. That encyclical is about anyone who has must allow others who haven't to come and take from them. It's a social doctrine that is now permeating right throughout Marxism, communism, and we're seeing this played out. Basically, what he was doing, guys, he was laying the foundation back in 1900 for Klaus Schwab to say, you will own nothing and be happy. It started way back then. That's the Club of Rome. And when you link that to the Communist Manifesto, the Marxist Manifesto, and you study a thing called an Hegelian dialectic, which is where parties that look like they should be opposed to one another create a conflict because they want a common solution that benefits both of them. That's what's happening. It's frightening. It's infiltrating every aspect of our life. 56% of millennials in America have said they don't want capitalism anymore. They want communism. They want Marxism.
Good God.
6% of millennials. This is indoctrination. We have been involved in World War III since way before the 1960s, and we don't even recognise it.
They know not what they do, Hoodie. They know not what they do. They don't understand, because a lot of these younger generations, and it's the same for my kids and extended kids, because I've got loads living with me now because they can't find anywhere to rent. They can't do their thing of starting their lives. It is, while someone else is paying your bills and putting a roof over your head and helping you go to uni and all that stuff, it's easy to think that would be the better option, but that changes pretty quickly when you grow up. At the beginning of our show, we've got that clip from Marco Savio, who's an activist from Berkeley in the 1960s. And he said then, you've got to put your bodies against the gears and the machinery of these governments, and you've got to stop them working. And you've got to say to them that unless you're free, this machine will be prevented from working. Now, I think some of the things we're seeing, like this change in attitude towards the COVID jab for children in America and then here in Australia, it is the beginning of the end of this particular mission, this particular agenda that they had. But that doesn't mean that they don't have more up their sleeve. We know that they do. I mean, the unelected Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Parliament, unelected by anyone, and all of the European Parliament members really dislike her. And when they say so on a microphone, she cuts their mic off. So I'd like to know who installed her. You've got democracy, and then you've got the level above, and we don't know who the level above is. She talks about, we've got to get in preparation for these other pandemics, and Bill Gates, these other pandemics. And you talk about the poor, the masses taking from those who have. It's never taking from the likes of Bill Gates or King Charles III or Klaus Schwab. I mean, it's incredible to me, right? I'm just going to touch on this quickly because tell me if this is as crazy to you as it is to me. When we've got this issue of the whole welcome to country, the welcome to country thing seems to be saying that we had a group of people here who were oppressed and we're making up for this oppression. But in doing that, in doing the welcome to country, you are actually oppressing another group of people, the Europeans who came here, and you asked them to come here and build the new world, to build Australia. So in saying that you're making reparations for a community you oppressed, you are oppressing another community, and that's absolutely fine. What is wrong with us as human beings that we can't stop this? We need to stop it now. Stop dividing people up by who got where quickest and where they came from and what color their skin is and what religion and whether they're bloody vaccinated or not, or gay or straight.
Yeah.
This is what these so-called leaders do. None of that matters. None of us know what each other gets up to in the bedroom or gets up to in a church, and none of us want to know. You are judged on the content of your character. And unfortunately, we've got criminals governing the innocent. That's the problem with this world right now. Nothing else matters. The rest of it is just a smokescreen. Criminals are governing the innocent, and they have to be stopped.
Yeah, well said, Nicola. And I mean, it is classic playbook from Marxism. It's there right for everyone to see. I mean, Ronald Reagan was the president who staunchly stood against communism and brought down the Berlin Wall in conjunction with Gorbachev. But a lot of people don't know that Ronald Reagan was just a leading man in Hollywood back in the late 40s.
Mm.
Excuse me, who was living the life, having a great lifestyle and enjoying things. And there were a whole bunch of people around him, actors like William Holden, who were talking about communism and why isn't he on board? And then all of a sudden he started to realize that the communists, Russian communists, were infiltrating Hollywood because it was a propaganda machine already made. And
Yeah.
so when he realized that, he could see he was told by one of the Warner brothers in a private meeting that the communists are trying to take over Hollywood because they want to dictate the narrative to the United States to bring it down. He fought against that and he became the president of the Screen Actors Guild and was persecuted. He never got another major leading role in Hollywood from that time on, but went on to become president to bring down communism in America. And that is alive and well today. We see it in critical race theory. I had the pleasure of sharing a stage with Charlie Kirk in Phoenix, Arizona. He and I sat on a couch together and were interviewed together. It was great. And that guy's all over that sort of stuff. We can see how that stuff is manifesting, and it's right before our eyes. But that won't be illuminated unless people like us stand in this independent media space and keep having the courage to say what's unpopular, because we'd rather stand on somebody's toes today than stand at their grave on Friday.
Or kneel. I'm not kneeling for them. So
No.
you can take me out. You've taken me out financially. You've destroyed my reputation with slander and defamation. You've destroyed my career. So I'm standing. Come get me.
John?
Well, look, just I think on a positive side, Hoodie, I think what that amendment in relation to the under 18s being vaccinated tells me is that when the US eventually, and I'm hoping it'll be sooner than later, expands that out and backs it up with real-time data and a punchy follow through, our people will crumble. I mean, they can't go back from there,
That's
and
right.
Trust.
that should be a welcome sign to everyone out there that they are really just the lapdogs for everyone else here. They can't think for themselves, and that's exactly what Nicola pointed out, that old mate Airbus Albo straight over to Brussels to get his orders. Well,
Yeah.
Jason played a clip on the show this morning of RFK, and in the clip, he's interviewed on someone else's podcast, and he said that 16+% of all COVID 19 deaths, was it COVID-19 or vaccines, Jason, happened in America, and they only have 4.2 of the population. So something
deaths, yeah.
was going on stateside. Something very suspicious was going on stateside. I would argue that something very suspicious was going on Australia side as well.
Well, yeah, we've seen so many stories, haven't we, with ventilators, etc., and the marking of deaths as certain ways, etc. Run death as near, or remdesivir, as James Roguski calls it. So many different scenarios that played out that you can't explain in the United States. How the most advanced country in the world could have such an appalling result. I'll tell you what was interesting was in doing those COVID stats was I used to do constantly would check Israel v Palestine, because we knew that Israel had very high rates of vaccination and you knew Palestine had very low. Well, on every single metric, Palestine beat Israel, on every single one, every single time. I also used to do comparisons between Nigeria, Singapore and Australia, which people thought was crazy. But the reason I did was that pre-vaccine, we all had roughly the same amount of cases of COVID. And then, of course, it completely changed. Singapore was the absolute worst because they had the highest number on that tiny little island, then Australia, and Nigeria virtually no cases after the vaccine because no one got vaccinated. Go figure. And so that was an interesting one to chronicle as well. So I wonder if this stuff will eventually get looked at from a historical perspective, or perhaps we're all going to have to write PhDs at that point, and it'll be the doctor news at that point. But it's staggering to think that that's what's going on. Now, the other thing is where it changes. This is what I've been scratching my head. Where does it change? Does it get to a point where there's enough bad news happening that people go, well, I've got to go and find my news somewhere else? Or is it when the message changes? And I wonder if it's a combination of what we're doing. If we're first to point these things out, if we're first to point out the change now, what's going on, if we're going to be the first to report on justice and accountability, what happens therefore when the punishment comes, and will there be civil action, which there has to be, in terms of compensation? And who will be compensated? Will it be those families of the ones that died? Will it be the ones that were forced to take it and were injured? Will it be the ones that were forced to take it? And will it be the ones who were discriminated against, who didn't take it, who had to go against that and lose their livelihoods? And we've already seen in the US, there's been people reinstated to the US military, back paid for their time. So the question is, who pays? How does it work? Does that trigger what people, the ultimate debt jubilee or financial reset? And the problem I have now with the financial reset idea is that technically is a form of hyperinflation. If you gave everyone $20 million, it's worthless because everyone's got $20 million. It's a supply and demand issue. However, if you were to keep what you own, what you have, and start again like there's no debt, and let's say you're a tenant and the tenant gets to keep the property that they're in, well, that kind of gives you some sort of balance. But that's the magnitude of what we're talking about here. So what I'd like to be able to say to young people who are scratching their head wondering is the system, you're going to realize at some point, has failed you. But there are people that have got lifetimes of experience. And just looking at the screen right now, we've got over 150 years, if you will, of actual lived experience. And that counts for something. And we know we've met, all of us on this journey have met so many people. We've interviewed so many people. And this level of wisdom doesn't exist in the mainstream media. No one has interviewed the staple of what we've done over the last 5 years, the alternate views, the real thinkers, doctors, lawyers, journalists, authors, professors, astronauts, for goodness sake, the people that we're talking to, people that are professors of exopolitics, the politics of off Earth. You watch the Today Show and they're talking absolute menial nonsense, trivia, garbage.
Yeah.
So something has to change. And I look at it, and John, you're the first person on this panel to get elected to public office. Now, that alone is a massive feat, much bigger than it may appear in terms of title. It is a huge deal. If I can sort of turn the conversation around a bit. If you, what I'm saying now, do you feel that your position now as an elected person can lead to something else? Is even a method to teach others to become elected in the future? Have you got something there that is valuable that we're going to be able to grow from?
Yeah, I think so, Jason. I think there's a number of people who've been elected, and I think you're right. In my case, I'd previously been elected. I'd previously been deputy mayor and mayor. So, but in light, I think this recent election during COVID is even more interesting because when you think about it, that should have been the period when the community, on the basis of what Kerry Chant and Brad Hazard have told everyone, is where I should have been disregarded. I should not have been elected. They've essentially thrown me out of a job as the manager of the ambulance service in the town and said, this bloke's a rogue. But they re-elected me back onto the council. And I think that there are lessons to be learned from that. And I honestly think the grassroots level of councils is probably where we can have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time to change things. Because if you get that groundswell of people that have got real contact with real people in real communities, then that can surface and bubble up very, very quickly. And that's where you can probably have some really, really good outcomes from all of this. I mean, even when you look at that adjustment from the TGA or whoever has put that document out about the under-18s, I mean, how is that not? That one document alone, when you think of what Donald Trump has done overseas,
Yeah.
reinstating military, how is that not now an instant flicker of light for the premiers of each state to say, okay, we've admitted in writing that we got this badly wrong. Let's bring back those police officers. Let's bring back those paramedics, the nurses, the baristas, anyone that was fired currently, bring them back. I mean, worry about the compensation later, but uh, get those people back into what they want to do, being of benefit to their communities and to their loved ones. And I think of someone like Justin Paul. I mean, here's a guy that was a state of origin footballer for New South Wales. He played for Parramatta. He played for St George. Loved football, but he wanted to be a police officer. And so he gave up his football career to go into policing. And during the COVID mess, he said, no, I'm not having the vaccine. They sacked him. He can't even get a job as a security guard. They've said that he's basically a criminal because he was fired from the police for under what they call a 181D, which means that he was fired for,
Insubordination, that kind of thing.
and so now, there's about 55 of them, I think, in New South Wales that cannot get security licenses. They'll have problems traveling overseas to places like America where they'll have to, maybe get visas and things. I mean, it's a massive, big issue. And all he wants to do is come back to the police, even now, even in the last days, and serve his community. That's all he wants to do. I don't think it's a big ask in light of that adjustment to the document on the 3rd of June.
Look, we've got to bring this to a close. We're having way too much fun. And I hope this isn't the last time we do this because I think it's been insightful. I think we're enjoying it. And I think what we're demonstrating is a validity and an authenticity about this new media that's rising. And I want to, we're not pushing our own barrow, John and I, but as far as I know, we were the only alternative media people invited to give evidence in a Senate committee hearing. And and we both acquitted ourselves very well in that. John gave an amazing speech. I gave a speech that had we both had them in tears in the Senate in this committee hearing for a while, and that happened because we're keeping it credible, we're disciplined, and we're staying focused on the mission. And even people on the other side of the fence can listen to the four of us now and say, you know what, these guys are actually credible. They really should be listened to at least at some level. Because the crux of what we said in the Senate was Forget all the politics, forget all the narratives. If you thought that someone was tampering with your immune system or your DNA, would you like to know about it? And that's all we're doing. That's all we're asking. And the other thing that I capped my speech off with was that this government has ridden over the greatest human factors failure in world history, and they will be held to account for it one day. And they need to take that situation very, very seriously. And that's what drives our credibility. That's what drives our authenticity. We're happy to admit we're wrong. In fact, we want to be wrong, but we can't be. We can't do that because we know we're now on the right track and the evidence is pointing that way. So I just want to say before we go to a prayer that the Daily Australian guys, look, if I hate to be over pushy about this stuff, but if all you did every day was listen to the Daily Australian and follow that up with Club Grubbery, you're going to get most of what you need to know to navigate the next whatever it is that's coming down the pike. So more power to you guys for doing this. It's a great initiative. I think there's a real force building underneath all of this that's going to bring alternative media into mainstream. And that's the best way to punish mainstream media, as I said at the opening, is knock them out of the park. And we're already doing that. We're already doing that. So
Yeah.
I'll close with a prayer and then we'll come back for a quick final comment from each of you. Dear Lord Father in heaven, we ask for the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, but the courage to change the things we can, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, and taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is and not as we would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if we surrender to your will so that we may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Nicola, final comment before you go?
I would just like to thank you guys as much as you've thanked us. You've definitely helped me and reassured me, and I think it's important that we manage to allay fears in as many people as possible, and also just encourage them to use their own instincts and their own minds. I think one of the things that upset me the most is that individual choice was restricted. Informed consent wasn't real. People weren't informed. You can't have informed consent if you're not informed. And just be able to make your own decisions. It's our body. It was gifted to us by our mothers, right? Our parents. And it's up to us what we do with them. And I am very uncomfortable with the world moving forward when a businessman like Bill Gates can arrive and sort of demand and mandate that someone else, a third party, gets to control this body. Now, there's a lot of things that you can control. You can sell us computers that already have viruses, but you're not going to put anything inside my body that later on makes you rich. So I just want to thank you both for what you do. I really appreciate you, and thanks for inviting us on today.
Thanks, Nicola. Jason Olbourne.
Well, Hoodie and John, look, thank you for the invitation, for acknowledging the work that we are all doing together, and the idea of collaborating is the way forward. We will work towards already behind the scenes in how we formalise and how we become professional. I've mentioned this before. It's important that the independent media is recognised, but that means credentialed. That means we have to become professional, which means we have to be paid for the work that we do, however that comes about. But that will lead to a code of conduct. It will lead to press cards, which means that we get in on an equal level, which defends against any misinformation laws that are used specifically against us because we challenge the narrative. This whole thing is about narrative. And what we have done all along is challenge the mainstream, and we've presented facts to prove that we were right all along, as demonstrated in this show today. And perhaps the last word, I guess, goes to the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. When he wrote in his book, Government Gangsters, he described the deep state as this: unaccountable elites using the power of the state who will do anything in order to preserve that power. And that is what we are here for, to work against that, which means that I guess we're doing God's own work. Thanks, guys.
Amen. Thanks for coming on, guys. And Johnny Larder, you've often been heard to say,
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't. And don't forget Australia. This is a wonderful country because you live in it, whether you agree with us or not. But for goodness sake, if you love it, stand for it. Stand for it and don't stand for the garbage that's bringing us to our knees. God bless you all. Thanks for watching Club Grubbery. Thanks for watching the Daily Australian. And we're going to do a lot more work together. I just feel it. And we look forward to sharing that with you, our audience, on the Daily Australian and Club Grubbery. God bless you all. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.